but I don't mind if you post it either. So here is where I try to gather context, and you can see a little bit of this in that article I sent you.
Mm-hmm.
But so basically, if you look at original, and this is as original as it gets because I can't keep track of all the versions
Mm-hmm.
like as accurate, but this is somewhere before 2016 from my knowledge. So it's pretty
Mm-hmm.
close to the original structure. And if you look at it, basically it was kind of flipped. The global items were on the left sidebar,
Mm-hmm.
and then the contextual items were more like on the not on the top. They weren't even there yet. But the big ticket here is that the global items are on the left, whereas now the global items are at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so then there's this iteration where you can start to see the same thing. The global items are still on the left sidebar right here, and then you can see contextual items at the top. Um, and I think this is also a related iteration that I just found today. I just saw this screenshot today. And I was like, oh my goodness, I did not even know where it was, but this is somewhere in between um, the original and I don't know. I don't even know. I just literally saw it today in an issue, and Annabelle posted it, and she was like, "This is from GitLab version 8 or something." I'm like, "What?"
Okay.
Because this looks a little bit like somewhere between the contextual and global. But as you can see, there are two levels of nav going on in this version.
Mm-hmm.
So you can start to see some of the going back and forth action happening here, which is why it's been so contentious over the years. And then there was this one where now you have the contextual items on the left side like they are today. This was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the starting point for where we're at today. I think this was around that redesign that you probably were reading about. 2017 would be that redesign. But as you can see, in 2018, you get a little bit more, a few more items popping up, but fairly consistent, right, with
Mm-hmm.
2017. 2018 was the year that we were doing most of the navigation research, a little bit into early 2019, but this was kind of the structure that was being researched. Fast forward to 2020, and it just about doubles in size. So we're in this situation, and it actually correlates pretty well. So basically, around 2018 is where GitLab started having the emphasis on being a DevOps platform, whereas before it was kind of more dev centric, which is why you see a lot more emphasis on, repository issues, merge requests, and whatnot. But after that point, then you started having things like security come in, operations and analytics start, and then you kind of grow and grow from there. Um, so the problem with this is that this is where we left off before we have reached that 2020 like level. So basically, it it doesn't fully. It kind of applies, but it doesn't fully apply. We're in this awkward situation where we're probably going to need to just do another round of research on this structure because it's kind of like doubled in size, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a difference in like the cognitive load, of searching for something in this menu versus like this menu. So we're probably going to start again by doing some tree testing on this structure, from what I've heard so far. Um, and to give you another look at what was going on, so in 2018 we did tree testing on this structure,
Mm-hmm.
and so this was like kind of what the tree looked like.
Well, security
Um,
wasn't even on there.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy how much has changed since then. And in that study that we did, we did a project and group level like thing together.
Mhm.
But if you go to what we'd be testing in 2020, I did like a new and removed so you could see what's different about the structure.
Mhm.
Basically, the top part, repository is pretty much the same. Issues is about the same as well. And then on the bottom half is where you just like get a bunch of new items. And then it's kind of exploded from there.
Mm.
And same with the group level one as well. So
Mm.
what we kind of have to do is we need a baseline measurement for this structure because it's so different from the one that we tested before,
Mm.
which is not something that was like immediately obvious when they were writing the priorities.
Yeah.
And for example, some things might still apply. Like one of the recommendations from back then was to add a planning category at the group
Mhm.
level. And we might still need a planning category, but for example, statistics might not be relevant anymore because we have a whole analytics section that
Mm.
has kind of grabbed some of the things that were supposed to be under statistics.
Mm.
So we kind of have to tease this apart a little bit more before making improvements to the left sidebar.
Mm.
Um, that's one thing. I'll pause here. Hopefully,
Mm.
is this useful information? Is this in the yeah? So in the sus, I love that little thing. It always interrupts you, and you're like, I get why it does it, but you can't just smoothly have it begin again ever. Anyway, so in the sus survey, what we're often getting from people is one, just the challenge of finding things, two, the challenge of kind of like navigating between project and group level. So,
Mhm.
the sidebar looks one way at the project level, and then you might go to the group level and you're like, hey, where did all the things go? Because you didn't
Mm.
register that you went to a different level. Um, Another thing is this something that often comes up is people will be like, I wish I could customize this. Like, I'm a product manager and I don't care about anything on the bottom half of this sidebar. I want to customize it.
Mm.
But we actually do, I don't know if this is the right one, we actually do have a way to do that. Wait, I'm running into the problem. I need to go to my other project where I can show you the settings. It's like kind of tricky. It's tricky to even document everything in the nav because it depends on which one you're looking at. So I had to look
Right.
at like 3 different projects to make sure I got every single item.
So how do you
Um,
know which one you're in? Is there like, is it just
like,
the options that you see that you can tell the difference between group and project, or is there?
yeah. So basically, to determine whether you're at the project or group level, basically just this overview is your main giveaway. But if you don't even really process that part, then you wouldn't
Mm.
really
Mm.
notice. But it used to be that the group level sidebar was just a lot smaller, and it still
Mm.
is smaller, but it has more items than before. So that's
Right. Gotcha.
that's the main thing. But that's something we want to work out as well, is
Mm.
having better differentiation between those two
Mm.
levels. Um, and so basically, back to that customization problem, we actually have a setting in settings, general, visibility, project features and permissions, where you can disable certain items from this left sidebar.
Mhm.
But this setting is not that discoverable for people. So a lot of
Mm.
people don't know this setting exists.
Mhm.
So that's one problem that's described in this issue. But another problem is that this list of features is not fully updated. And from what my sleuthing has shown me, is that I think this stopped being updated around perhaps like 2018 or something,
Mhm.
because it kind of correlates to that you can't turn off security, operations, and like certain like analytics, certain new things that were added. they're just not on here. So you can't even turn them off,
Mm.
even if you knew where this setting was. So that's a challenge that needs to be addressed, and that kind of intersects between settings and navigation. The discoverability of the setting and figuring out how to handle this page that contains all the disabling and enabling, because there's a lot more items to account for here. So those are two that I put under here, and those might be things that we can tackle while we're doing research kind of on the other hand.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it'll play out yet. But,
Okay.
that's one thing there. Yeah. Any questions so far?
Nope, none yet. This week for me is just like sponge mode and just like
Okay.
absorb and analyze
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. So this left side nav is a pretty hot topic. It's like one of the hottest topics for navigation, but it's not the whole picture, but it's so prominent and in your face that it gets a lot of the attention. So then the groups and projects section is about like making changes to, make it easier to understand whether you're at the group level or project level. Also figuring out the hierarchy of how they work, because if you look at the sidebars, you kind of have to click to this group to access the group level sidebar, and you have to kind of click to a project to access the project level sidebar. It's not,
Gotcha.
it's not a seamless transition, I guess, if you know what I mean. Like if I'm here, I gotta go find my project that I want to go jump to. Or like if I was in the GitLab.org group and I wanted to drill down into a project in here, it's either I'm going to this page of things or I'm just going to this project list here and searching for it. There's just kind of a slight, I don't even know, like a disconnect to me.
Yeah. I think it's like a missing link or something that's not joining the two, and it's like a little bit confusing. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is a big topic. I know we have a group that's a working group that's dedicated to the simplifying groups and projects, but that might also be an issue that you might want to think about.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's going to be completely under your wheelhouse, but that's another big topic. Kind of figuring out that link between the two of them. And then, so that's the main thing with that. And then, so we talked about the left side, then the general groups and projects problem. And then the next thing is this top nav right here. So this has gone through a couple iterations as well itself. Before this more button, these were all just kind of placed at the top, just like all the words just out there. And it was like kind of like the left side had a bunch of words and then the right side were just a bunch of icons, and they were just separated by this. Now they're under more, which I don't know how you feel about that, but it doesn't really tell you much of what's going on. It's just more. So that's another challenge that we want to figure out as well. This how to better, I guess, utilize the space here. And it's like, is it supposed to be something someone can pin to make it more relevant to their needs, or is it just global? What's going on up here, basically? Because these are like very user-centric, and these are kind of like anybody, your whole instance, not your whole instance, but like just, it's just like kind of everything. Like you can look at all the activity across everything, and like all the snippets. It just is like everything. That's what's happening at the top. And then I feel like this is the most random tour of the navigation, but hopefully you're keeping up with what I'm describing.
I think that's why I recorded the call, because I know it's gonna go jumping around a lot. Yeah, so no worries
Yeah,
there.
me navigating throughout GitLab to show you our navigation is an interesting concept. And then wayfinding. So then our next thing is kind of around, all right, so how do I know where I am in GitLab and how do I know how to get back to things? Because another thing that comes up often is I lose everything if I don't bookmark it in my browser, or I have to rely on the browser navigation to kind of get to places. So this is another topic that I guess is under here. I'm not sure that these are the right steps per se, but for example, when you've just gone to somewhere, frequently visited is not always the most reliable. Like, I haven't clicked on this one in a very long time, and the ones I have clicked on don't always show up, and there's like something with the local storage or something like that. But it's a similar thing here. And I think in the search, you're also able to see recent things now. This is a new development. So that used to be a problem though. It was like hard to find your recent issues and like where you even have gone throughout GitLab without relying on your browser and like bookmarks, or sometimes using the to-do list to kind of star things and keep track of things to get back to them, like little workarounds like that. So I think the wayfinding priority is kind of like, yes, let's improve the information architecture of the menus, but we also need to kind of consider the holistic experience of navigating and being like staying oriented in GitLab. I think that's what that part is. And then it gets more into the nitty gritty, as they say, where it's more around the UI issues, I believe. So I guess maybe just let's open this, what this even entails. Visual improvements. So maybe improving consistency just across GitLab and things like that. But so far, those are the main things. So I've created 2 UX research epics. I don't know how big they'll get. With the left side navigation, what we're thinking to do is to do a top level tree test for project and group level. So that's just like findability tasks for the whole thing. And then also drilling down. So maybe we'll be able to outsource this a little bit, like the secure section. The secure section might be able to take on the tree testing or card sorting aspect for the security and compliance items. And like the analytics group might be able to take on that part for their own like sections of the nav. But there will be a general top level test to have like a benchmark and baseline metrics of like how well the structure performs before we make improvements to it one way or another. So that's like the current research plans that I know of. We probably might do a similar thing for the top nav, but haven't really figured that part out. So yeah, so that's pretty much from a research perspective. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the baseline metrics so that we're able to track success after each new like change is implemented. And we also want to get a better hold on who is contributing to this navigation so that we can make sure that there's a system for how things are added. Because right now, because of the discoverability issues, a lot of groups are adding things as top level items so that people can find them on that left sidebar, but they may not necessarily actually need to live there. That's just like the main discoverability mechanism for a lot of groups right now. So think by improving some of these other things and improving the wayfinding and when it comes to, we didn't even touch on the settings epic. So when it comes to, I just noticed that. When it comes to settings, there's a similar, I think I have it here somewhere. I don't know. Ah. No, search, don't fail me now. Please. Okay, I think I found it. When it comes to settings, there's probably a similar thing going because the settings are all in the left sidebar right now, right?
Yep.
Or actually, that was a slight lie. The settings are in multiple left sidebars. So you have the group level settings, the project level settings, the admin settings, and the user profile settings. Did you know that?
No.
You didn't know? You see? Nobody else does either because they're all this preferences one right here. This is where so many of the things live. The themes, where you can set your homepage content, project overview content, things like that live under preferences, hidden away in the user settings. So when it comes to settings, we do need to do some research as well. This one is less fleshed out, this epic, but a lot of it will be around the information architecture of the settings. So everything going on in this, I have to keep finding this one because
across the three worlds.
It's the only one I have access to settings in, so I have to keep finding it. But yeah, so like the settings information architecture issue, because it may not have the levels of navigation like the rest of it, but when you click onto it, the pages are just really long, and especially general, it's like a grab bag. A bunch of random settings live under general.
Right.
So we have a lot of information architecture stuff going on there. They're also adding settings to the global search to make it searchable. But also, there we go. I almost lost my train of thought. But also the placement of the settings. So right now, a lot of them just live here. I believe there's only maybe 2 groups that have settings somewhere else, or maybe 3. Like, I think Geo might have settings like on a page somewhere, and I think configure and security are potentially considering like having settings somewhere on the dashboard or something like that. But for the most part, they live in here. But we're also considering where they actually should be placed. Like, does a user expect to just go find them in the left sidebar, or do they want to be changing a setting while they're actually in the middle of their task, like in the same place without having to switch context? So that's like another question around settings. Yeah. So basically it's huge, and there are multiple sidebars going on here, which is why I'm like, we're in for a ride. You and I. There's a lot going on. I'm thinking it might be that we're more involved on the general, like setting the foundation, and then the individual groups might be able to replicate what we've done. Like, for example, we're doing the research like of the top level and setting the baseline, but there are also individual efforts going on, like operations. I know there's a research happening there already. So I think for us, we might be a little bit higher level, and we'll set more of the baseline and start hopefully setting more of the guidelines and thinking about like a system for how things should work. And then other teams can like pick it up from there is potentially the goal.
That's not a bad way to kind of approach this, and like even the way you were describing some of this stuff. For example, like delegating certain card sorts to certain groups because it's more specific to them and their users. So, pushing that off and then kind of having the rough areas for them. So that's not a bad way to kind of think about this. Yeah, I'll let you know as soon as I find out more information as well. But I think this is a great walkthrough. Thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome. Do you have any other questions?
Um,